Welcome to Carefree and Conscious with me, Susanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium. On today's show, our guest host is Diane Calderon. Today, my child teaches me from beyond the veil. Meet Marie Sulda, an accredited and practicing counselor and regression therapist. For many years, Marie was a travel agent. She traveled all over the world with her husband and her two daughters. She has worked in executive management roles, and she founded a business with an underpinning ethos of opening people's minds to the world around them and bringing understanding and tolerance. In 2020, when COVID arrived, Marie, forced to stay within Australia, her home country, she had to scale down her business, and the unthinkable happened. Her worst fear came to pass when one of her daughters, her 11-year-old, suddenly had an aneurysm at school one morning. She did not survive. The loss sent her on a journey to honor that love and the learning that she had from her beautiful daughter, Sienna. She has written a book that is called Travel the Mind for children to help them connect with themselves, relieve their anxiety, and learn how to make a connection with their loved ones who are on the other side of the veil. Marie is also the co-affiliate leader for the chapter of Helping Parents Heal in New Zealand and Australia. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to celebrating the lives of children who have crossed to the other side and supporting their families. And now, Carefree and Conscious, my child teaches me from beyond the veil.
Yes. Hi, Marie. How you doing?
Good, thank you, Diane. Lovely to be here today.
Thank you. Would you like to give us a little more information and background?
I would say in about 2014, as I was working in my job, I started to feel this real anxiety coming up in me that seemed to come out of nowhere. And it really took a lot of my time and energy. And I was feeling this big fear of being separated from my daughters. So I think a lot of young parents feel this in the sense of, oh, what if something happens to them, or what if something happens to me? So that anxiety was quite overwhelming in me for a couple of years. And it got to the point where I had actually seen a advertisement for a regression therapist to overcome fears. So I thought, I'm going to give that a shot. So I went to the regression therapist, and she put me under hypnosis, and I ended up going backwards through a past life. And once I'd gotten through that life, it took me to the point of passing and into the realm in between. And in that in-between realm, I was able to really ask myself some questions, or have a chat with myself. And in that space, I was saying, I need to quit my job. I need to start my own business. I need to work on this balance concept of balancing, being able to spend more time with family. I was only part-time, but I was feeling all of those stresses of, childcare and school and all those things. So I wanted to be there for my daughters. So I decided to start this business. And I very clearly heard, start this business. Within 5 years, everything's going to change, and you will really start on your true path, which will be helping other people. So I didn't give that too much thought. I just assumed in my mind, okay, things are obviously going to change after that time. I chose to go with travel because that's what I knew, and I started this business, and everything was going really well. I was loving the balance. I could, go to the school assembly and see my daughters performing or whatever, whenever I wanted, and did all of those sorts of things. And then I guess fast forward to 5 years from then, we had 12 staff there who were doing the same thing, working from home, and the company was quite big. And, you know, I couldn't have really foreseen anything shaking that trajectory at that point. We were, you know, we were growing, everything was great, everything was nice and balanced. And I was even starting to sort of take my foot off the pedal and think to myself, great, this is, you know, I could maybe even have extra time here at this point. And then COVID came, and in Australia, all of our borders were closed. So that meant that travel was completely just not even possible. So in that time, we also went into a lockdown. So I was able to spend some really good quality time with the girls. They were doing a little bit of homeschooling. But, you know, I was very conscious that, okay, if this is my challenge, that's fine. My first and foremost has always been my connection to my girls and my husband and my family, and that's okay. So I can weather this storm. And I was really positive to the girls, you know, always saying, that's cool. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about this. It's all good. We're together. We're healthy. That's all that matters, you know. We were allocated half an hour walks every day where we could go out into nature. It seems crazy to say that now, doesn't it? We're allocated some time outside. So we went I would take them for a walk down the beach, and we did this special walk that was, you know, it was a lovely walk that we did all the time. And I remember about 2 weeks before my daughter passed away, she said to me, Mum, what do you think happens when you die? And I said to her, you know, nobody really knows. I said, but the best evidence we have is the accounts of people who have maybe had a near-death experience. And I said, and I have watched a few of those. And I said, and I think what happens is, you know, there might be a light and you might be pulled towards that light. And then, you know, you might actually go through a life review or something like that. And I said, and in that review, what I've heard is that you get to experience all of the things that you've done that have made other people feel good, and also all the things that you may have done, and you see it from two perspectives. You see it from your own and you see it from the perspective of the other person. I said, so one of my daughter's qualities was that she would always give people random compliments. Like, we'd be walking on the beach and a stranger would walk past and she'd be like, I love your hair, or I'd love your jumper. And I'd say to her, all those times that you said that, you might get to see how they went home and how they were maybe happier with their family. So, and she was quite happy about that. And she said to me, Mum, when I die, I don't want to suffer. I want to die really quickly. And I said, okay, well, that's, you know, that's a long way into the future. And she said, you know, I really want to be cremated. And I was like, okay, you know, this is morbid, but in my mind, I'm thinking maybe she's thinking about COVID. I'm not sure, but it was definitely a very strong conversation. And after that, you know, in the weeks leading up, she said lots of things to all of us that, you know, that were almost in hindsight, like a little bit of goodbyes. Like, you know, she spoke to me about how I was as a mother. And on the beach, I said to her, is there anything I need to be forgiven for as a mother? Which I found like a strange question to an 11-year-old, but I felt it arise in me. And she said, yeah, Mum, when we had that dog and then we had to rehome the dog. And I was like, yes, fair enough. That was a terrible situation. And we said our sorries for that in that space. And then, you know, she said things like to her sister, if ever I'm not here, you know, you can go to this one of my friends and she'll be like an older sister to you, and things like that. And then she passed very suddenly. She went to school that morning. You know, I pulled her. She was going with her dad, and I pulled her back and gave her a big kiss on the head and said, have a great day, you know. And by 11:30, she was at school and had around that time a burst aneurysm. So it was undiagnosed and we didn't realise that it was there, or And in those days, obviously that was the hardest. We got her to hospital and they did try surgery, but it was unsuccessful. And it was just an unbelievable time, as, you know, people who have lost loved ones will know. It's very hard and difficult. And when we were returning from the hospital, she did donate her organs because she was able to do that. And on our arrival home, we had realised that she had had a calendar up on her wall, which we had I had bought for her, and she had crossed off every single day on the calendar. But the days that she had passed away, and was in hospital, she had drawn a dragon flying off. And yeah, I had checked through the calendar to see if she'd drawn any other pictures. There were no other pictures. And she, as a child, had always said to me, I was always trying to be quite inspirational in the sense of saying, you know, you can do anything, you can be anything you want to be. And she used to look at me quite dryly and say, awesome, I'm going to be a dragon. So for me, that was sort of a little bit of an understanding that perhaps there was some knowing around this. And since then, obviously, it was horrific in the first 12 months for anyone who, it's horrific, you know, ongoing when you've lost a child, and there's no really glossing over that. It's one of the hardest, I think, life experiences that a human can go through. So for a long time as a family, we were very just feeling it and allowing it and unable to do much else, which I think it's fairly normal for family. But after a period of time, that connection to Sienna obviously is always there and is present, and I felt the need to honour her. She always wanted to be an author, so I felt that by doing that, she'd written this beautiful poem, and I'll read it to you because it's kind of like there's more than meets the eye with this. It's called Small Things, and it's in the book here. I'll just show you there. It says, sometimes you can't see them, sometimes you treasure them, but they are always there, whether you see them or you don't, like butterflies and bees and everything in between, a nicely made bed, a kiss on your head. And for me, that was just the most simplistic poem. But towards the end, when she was in hospital, we were always remaking the bed for her. I was always kissing her on the head. And it's her sort of saying to me, you know, sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't, but they are always there. So in order to honour her wish, I made this book, Travel the Mind. Her sister was obviously quite young. She was 9 when Sienna passed away. So that had its own challenges, obviously. There was lots of anxiety, and one of the tools that helped with that was at bedtime to go into a bit of a meditation, a guided meditation, to help her to sort of imagine her sister and to give her sister a hug in that space, and to feel that continued bond and connection with her sister. And she was able to sort of, I would encourage her in that space to say anything she wanted to say to her sister, or to feel if she had anything to say back to her, which was quite healing in that space. So this book, I think, you know, was about connectedness. It was about helping children who have lost a loved one to reconnect from that young age. I think sometimes they get lost in the loop. You know, it's really hard when parents have lost a child, they go to ground. So having a tool of reconnection for the parents and the child, I felt was really important. And for them to have that continued connection with their loved one that had passed away. And, you know, that could be a mother, a father, 2 grandparents as well. So, yes, that's where that was born from. And that sent me on a journey too of studying counselling and regression therapy in order for me to be able to sort of extend that hand back to some of the other people who I had some wonderful help through those, you know, through those early years from people, really strong people who had been there before, like Elizabeth, Helping Parents Heal, and some of those other amazing shining light people who help. So for me, that's where I found purpose and my ability to continue my bond with Sienna.
Wow, that is a heartfelt story, Marie. I completely empathize with you. I know from my heart, having gone through a similar situation, how difficult it is. I know when you lose your child, it feels like you've lost yourself.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find your meaning in life and move forward. And those who are able to move out of, that deepest of grief, it feels like there's a transformation for them to become somebody that maybe can make a few steps ahead and help others along their journey. So,
Absolutely.
wonderful for you to be able to do that and to recognize it. And I love that story about the, Sienna seeming to have an awareness before she passed that something was coming. I don't know, if it's clear in a person's mind that, hey, there's something and I'm going to be leaving, or if the soul is just giving them these little hints and they're trying to process. And so they're asking the questions. But when things happen and you look back, you go, oh, why did they ask that? Why did they say that? It has some meaning, some symbolism that then brings a little bit of, I think, helpfulness in processing that grief and their tragedy, because something in their soul knew it was coming. Wow, that's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's not been easy, and it's not been that long since it's been post-COVID.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have to say, on some level too, I feel like my own soul did know as well, because having that, awareness to listen is really important, I think, which often a lot of us don't learn to really do until past like a tragedy or grief, to really, when you go to ground and you're stripped of everything and you're down to nothing basically, and you can then hear that guidance sometimes. But the night before she passed away, I just kept thinking to myself, and now I think, oh, these are interesting, where these thoughts are coming from. Cook her a favorite meal, like, you need to make a big deal about this tonight and make a big dinner. And so I'd made this really special dinner midweek. It was like a school week with this amazing dessert and all of this stuff, like I feel like some celebratory. It was quite strange, and I just, I'm so glad I did listen to some of those things that came up in me as well. So, like you say, whether she had that knowing in the front of her mind, I think I can now recognize that maybe, there's that separation of knowing from your inner self, but your monkey mind doesn't quite know.
Exactly. Yeah. The monkey mind might not be able to process it too well. And, who knows where that would go. Yeah. It's amazing. Oh my gosh, how beautiful. And I love that idea that you had something going on in your own soul that knew there's a big event coming. Let's have a little celebration, without really knowing what that meant at the time. Yeah. But looking back, it's like, oh, amazing. Wow. I'm so glad that, I had done that for the family. What a way to say, we love you, and to kind of celebrate her being part of your life while she was here in the physical.
Yes.
So, wow, that's amazing. So thank you very much. How about talking a little bit about grief? Could you maybe explain, did you try to connect with Sienna when she had passed away? And what tools did you use to maybe assist in that process and to help in your grief?
I think I was fairly open-minded from the outset, and I was aware of, that there were psychic mediums available, but I had never been to a medium to speak with someone who had passed over before. So that definitely was a tool that gave me some really strong evidence from the earlier stages. I think I didn't see somebody until about month 3, but that helped me feel that connection. I think I was in a lot of shock, and I think most parents are in real deep, very deep grief and shock for at least 6 months. And then it slowly peels off. The layers peel off very slowly, one by one, to reveal other things to think about. But it was that sitting in nature actually as well was one of the really important ways that I felt a connection. And it's that connection that you realise that we are all connected to here, in terms of energy. We're connected to each other, we're connected to the earth. And I found that was a really good tool at sitting quietly and being able to speak to her in my mind. And I did come across actually quite early on some material from Susanne Wilson about connecting, and that was very helpful. And also through dreams, there was a lot of connection through dreams as well.
Oh, wonderful. I know it's a process to go through, and it's nice that there is information out there that can assist, and we somehow miraculously stumble into that information to help us in the process. That's a blessing right there on our journey. So you have the younger daughter, and she's going through her own grief. How did you teach her to connect with her sister in spirit?
So we held some, it's not very, I'm not sure about the States, but I think it's fairly similar to Australia in the sense that, we don't often have big shrines or offerings to people who have passed away. So it was really a kind of an intuitive, what's going to work for our family. We actually had we were brought up in the Catholic faith. So we have this wonderful priest. He's called the Barefoot Priest, and he actually connects quite a lot with Indigenous Australia as well, and has worked with the Indigenous Australians. So he brings some of that to his practice, and he had brought an Aboriginal elder to our house, and we had done this ceremony after 40 days. So I think, we were so lucky that sort of started this process for us, that they were able to come in and hold that space with us. And we walked around our house and spoke about Sienna, and we had a smoking ceremony inside. So she was exposed to that quite early. And then we did create a space with candles and things like that, with family photo, which I think is a nice way of keeping that memory there in the front. All it takes is a glance over there to keep that connection when you're going about your daily life. And then we would light a candle at nighttime, and we would just talk about our day. And so it was inviting Sienna into that space, and my other daughter, Gigi, she would speak to her sister or speak about her day, and it was just a way of keeping that continuation of that bond in that space, and allowing for the discussion of it and being very open about it. And then, being also sensitive to the times that she just didn't want to do that, which happens as well with the sibling. They have a life to live as well. So it's quite, you have to be aware of juggling that as well. And then the meditations as well. That was a really a way of her connecting.
You talk a little bit about signs and synchronicities, I think, in your work. And I'd like to ask that when Sienna passed suddenly, did you have any awareness that was going to happen before it did?
Yes. Her passing or the signs and synchronicity? Her
passing, first of all.
Not really, no. I didn't. But in hindsight, I feel like there were some, like I said, there's some discussions that happened. She was also making some, these beautiful little, she called them spirit animals, and they were very eclectic animals that you wouldn't see here. and she would make them out of clay. And so she'd put them all throughout the house in different spots. So we continued to find them after she had passed away. So yeah, that was like a little connection, another thing that I feel like, you know, there may have been some knowing.
Okay. What other signs and synchronicities have you had with Sienna since her passing?
Yeah, so I feel like there's just I'm really sensitive about this, because I know that there's so many parents out there or people who are like, I just don't have that connection. I don't get these connections. So there have been quite a lot for us, but I feel there was some sort of understanding of this before she passed, because I would always speak in this language of signs and synchronicities. So she would often say, "Oh, Mum, it's a sign," when she was here. But this continues to be the language, you know, that we speak in as she's passed. And sometimes it's just this, there's a quality to what has happened, in terms of if you're just thinking about something in specific, and then something in nature happens that's out of the ordinary, like a you know, the typical one is like a butterfly flies past just as you were thinking these things. However, I'll tell you one that was, there's been a few that's out of the box. One was, it was my 40th birthday, about 6 months after Sienna had passed away. And I really didn't want to have any celebration, but I did have my family and friends around. And in the morning, I was talking to Sienna in my mind, and I just said, "Oh, I wish you were here." And I kind of just had this feeling of, yeah, I am. I'm going to send you some fireworks, and they're going to be purple. And I thought to myself, oh, that's just wishful thinking. there's not going to be any fireworks tonight, you know. Anyway, at 9:30 that night, I hadn't told anybody about that, because I just thought, oh yeah, they'll think that I'm crazy. My sister comes running into the lounge room and she says, "There's fireworks out the front. Come outside. And sure enough, somebody had let off these fireworks that were purple.
Of
course. Of course. And then the other one that I feel like is out of the box is, I was at a one of these expos. It was like a new age expo, and I had just seen a lady there, and she had said to me, "Sienna's sending you a red balloon." And I said, "Oh, that's lovely. That's probably because it's my birthday." And this was a year up the next year. And I was like, "That's lovely. That's probably because it's my birthday, you know, this week." And she's like, "Oh yeah, maybe that's what it is." Anyway, 2 days after that, my husband and I were standing out in our backyard, and we were having a really rough day. And I think, you know, obviously these days come, it goes up and down like waves. And it was one of the ones where we were being crushed by the wave. And I was standing out there with him, and I said, "How do we do this? You know, how do we move through this?" And it's just, I feel so, you know, so sad. Blah, blah, blah. And as we were looking at each other, in between us, a red balloon on a string just flies past us in the backyard and flies up and just lands on her tree, which is her almond tree that we grew for her when she was born, hovered there and just flew off. Now, I've not ever seen a balloon in my...
What are the odds a balloon randomly goes right by you?
When you're saying these things, right when you've stepped outside to take a deep breath in a moment, you know.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, spirit is amazing, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I love that. So as you say, some parents are, you know, like really hoping to get signs. They're looking for those synchronistic events, and they're not quite seeing them. And then on the other side, there's some parents who just every little thing they think is a sign. How do you differentiate between assign a synchronicity from spirit? How do you determine the quality of those and really do feel that it is your loved one?
Yeah, I think if it comes to me, if it comes with a thought, if it comes with a memory and a feeling all at the same time when it happens, and a bit of evidence doesn't hurt, like being told that the balloon is coming, and then it comes, that's always good. But I think those things, and it's whatever is meaningful for the individual. And I think that's really important, because I think there's no two humans here on earth who are the same. So how could their communication be the same from the other side? Exactly. Our relationship with them is unique. So it is really unique to that person as to how much they need, what types of things that they need, and the timing of those things as well.
At times I feel like, not every feather, let's say, you see is a sign from spirit. But if you were thinking about that person and you're out for a walk and there's this beautiful feather, that could be a sign right there, right?
Yeah.
Or a specific color, like the balloon, pops into your awareness. It's like, that could be a sign. But just at random, not necessarily. It does depend on what you're really feeling. So I think that's good thing to keep in mind when you're looking for signs. We're talking about regression therapy. And could you maybe give us a little bit of description of your experience with the regression therapy, and tell us how it helps people in grief, and why you've decided to study this type of therapy?
I think I love regression therapy because it gives the ability for you to speak to your subconscious mind or your higher self, whoever you would like to call that. And from my experience that I had, that definitely gave me the time and space when I needed it to think very clearly about what I needed to do moving forward. And I think that is something that we don't get a lot of in society. We are, a lot of people at 9 to 5 work, then you've got all of your commitments outside of work, and life just keeps running on, in order to pay your bills and all of those things that society has. Whereas we don't often take that time to ourselves just to be still. And some people, are very good at it, and they meditate daily and things like that. And that's great. But some people need a little bit of extra help to sort of be guided in that space, to quiet their mind, to listen to themselves. And I truly believe that the best guide that you have is your inner self. So that's why I'm really passionate about it. I've seen some, amazing realizations come from people in regression. And I've seen some, some things that are hard to explain in terms of events that they've spoken about that have played out, 6-12 months later. And I don't think that's what happens for everyone, but I think, again, it's you get what you need at the time, in order from your individual experience. So a lot of people will either go into that space and sort of journey into a past life, and then there's some people that just go into the space in between, speak to themselves, and sometimes there's loved ones there that will arrive, not always, and then sometimes there's other people, other energies that they weren't expecting to be in that space as well, and they have some things to say to them.
I think that's fascinating to go into the regression therapy, and it can teach you quite a bit.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about dreams and what role dreams may play in grief. And have you had dreams with your daughter, Sienna?
Yes. Dreams is very big in our family. So we're a family that shares their dreams a lot. We've got quite a large extended family, so it's not uncommon to have one of my cousins message me and say, "Oh my goodness, I had this dream last night." And it might have some tangible meaning about what's happening at the moment in the world, or with our family, or things like that. So we've always had the culture that we pay attention to what is happening in that dream space. And I think there's elements to that are just our higher self processing what is happening in our life, and that wiser version of us is showing us something in terms of our grief. Sometimes, you know, it might be that you're continually going over a situation, a traumatic part of their passing, and that shows up for you in your dreams. And I feel like that is your subconscious mind trying to unravel this huge event in your life and trying to help you to process it and see it from different angles. And I had a lot of that, you know, but what if this had happened this way, or, you know, which is the mind trying to grasp something, you know, almost ungraspable. And then there's just some that have this very distinct, clear quality. One that I had just after she passed away was where she had met me at the front door, and she just looked just like she had before, and she was very vibrant. And she had said to me, she said, "Hello, Marushka," which is quite strange to me because that was my name in what my grandfather and my auntie from the Czech Republic used to call me when I was little, and they were actually on the other side. So I felt like, oh, you know, that's interesting. She's been talking with them, and she said, "Hey, Marushka." And then she said, "I've got to show you something, Mum." So we got in the car, and she showed me 3 different people and 3 different scenarios. And I won't go into too much detail there, but she said, she looked at me and she said, "Mum, that's why you're still here." And then I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "So, all right, I got to go now." and then I heard very loudly, "So, you know, sorry, she had to go, but you still have this to do." So for me, having that very early in grief was quite poignant for me to go, okay, there's obviously something still here for me to do. And, you know, you can say that could have been my subconscious mind too, giving me reasons to keep going. But I feel it definitely had a different quality to some of those others.
Different feel. And when you're feeling it in your heart, it feels right. You know, it's not the monkey mind again. Right.
100%.
Yeah. So talking about dreams, what's the best way to have a dream of a child that you are connected with, be it your daughter, granddaughter, or maybe someone you are close to that had passed as a child? What's the best way?
Well, I think that that having some intention around it is important, but also releasing your expectations. I think that when you're very heavily in grief, they just don't come as you want them to come. You know, you might just want to give your child a hug in a dream and to feel their presence again, but that doesn't necessarily come in those early stages. You know, for example, it took my husband almost 3 years to have a dream about Sienna. So and they came to me more frequently, and whether we don't know whether that's just, you know, our makeup, or whether it's that there were dreams happening before, but he just isn't someone who remembers them when he wakes up, which is possible. But I like to I remember Susanne, she had said about putting a glass of water by your bed and having an intention, and setting a date. And I feel like that's a really, really nice way to actually sort of invite that dream. And I think the intention is important, and the asking, and being really grateful if it occurs as well, and not wanting it every night.
Yeah, I think if you expect it every night, you may be disappointed some mornings, and then it kind of brings that energy down. But it's a nice 100%. Treat. Yeah, it's a nice treat once in a while. Sometimes when I'm laying down and, you know, I haven't heard from my spirit people for a while, I might say, "Hey, it'd be great to see you in a dream tonight," and just kind of leave it at that. And I may wake up surprised, and I may wake up like, well, not last night. Okay, maybe tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah.
They may be busy, but, I think spirit will come through when they really feel like you need them, or
Yes.
they just want to play with you a little bit, or just
Yeah.
make you feel good, right?
100%. Yeah. And all in
Yeah.
the right timing.
Exactly. It's amazing what they can do. Well, let's see. Let's open it up to a little bit of questions if anyone would
Great.
like. Okay, Terry, I will ask this question. Have you had anyone that you are not able to put into a hypnosis regression, since you are a practicing regressionist?
Yes, I have had 2 people who were not able to, and they were for various different reasons, but only 2. But I think that given some more practice, that they would have been okay in that sense. But I feel like the timing may not have been right for them.
Okay.
At that moment.
Okay, so every once in a while that could happen. Someone may want to be regressed, but there may be maybe a fear holding them back, or they get a little bit nervous, anxious, or it's like, well, what am I getting into? I don't know about this. Or
100%. Yeah,
okay.
it's a big ask, to put your sort of hands in somebody else, in the sense that a lot of people, if it's the first time they've done it, it's quite unnerving. But I think the thing to remember is that it's not, I can't make you dance like a chicken and I'm not gonna make you say things that you have no control over. You remember everything. So it's really just like remembering a dream. You're in that sort of state that you are just before you drift off to sleep, where you're still thinking about if you have to do the washing tomorrow or something like that, that could easily drift off into a dream, but doesn't. We hold you, you're held in that state that doesn't go to that next state of going to sleep.
I understand that. I've had a little bit of experience, being regressed, and I do remember them quite clearly. I didn't need to record them. It's like I can still recall them. And yet dreams, most of my dreams, if I don't write them down, or, I'll wake up and they're fresh, and then within a minute, it's like, oh my gosh, what was that again? But the regression was very clear, and it just felt so real that how could I doubt it? It's got to be something that I had.
It's a very strong memory, isn't it?
Yeah.
The quality of it is like it's a life memory, and even stronger than some life memories, in my opinion.
There are past life regressions, correct? And there can be life between lives regressions. Could you give a little short summary as to what each one of them is?
So the past life regression you can do in a few different ways too. So you could just do a curious past life. So you could come in and just say, you know what, just take me to the most, to a memory that I need to experience at this time, without any intention really other than that behind it. Then there are some other ways to process some issues that you might be having, or challenges, I like to say. For example, mine was fear. So this anxiety, I had this medical fear at the time. And so for other people, it might be, you know what, I'm always scared of needles. What is that about? Where does that come from? Or I've got this recurring pattern where, this thing happens in relationships. Maybe I always have partners who cheat on me, or something like that. So then they'll come in with that intention, and they would like to understand how that plays out in their life, and what is the purpose of that. And then you can go back and intentionally ask to go back to a past life where this hasn't been resolved, to get you a bit of a deeper understanding of how to resolve it in this current life. And then the other is the between life, and that requires you to do your most recent past life first. So you would go to your most recent past life before this one in one session, and then in the following session you would then pick up from that point, and you are regressing not a life on earth, but the life that happens in between. So the space in between that death point, and then your rebirth into this incarnation. So that was very interesting. That space. Yeah.
I would imagine. So in that space between your two lives, the past and the present, who would you be interacting with? What is the format for learning, and does it prepare you then for the next life? Answer the past, prepare for the future. How does that work?
So it's amazing, because the whole point of a good regression therapist is not to give any expectation or not to lead anybody with leading questions, and to leave it as open for them to tell you exactly what they're experiencing at that time. So it varies to some degree, but most of the elements are the same, which I find really fascinating. So people are often going to some place potentially of healing, depending on how they passed. They might describe it as some sort of cocoon or some sort of area where they're reviewing and then, doing some sort of review on their life, but then having a rest. But then there is this rejoining to their, often they're talking about soul group, and there'll be people in there that they've incarnated with here, and some people that they don't recognize. So they're talking about that space, and it's often a really beautiful, fun space. Either they've chosen their soul groups are in gardens, or they're hanging out in a library, or there's all these different spaces for learning. And then at some point there's this agreement of, okay, what else do we want to do? And then there's this agreement of some of the things that they're going to come back to achieve as a group, but also individually. So then the individuals will go and then they will go with their guides, and sometimes one person might come with them from their soul group into that space, but often it's when they're on their own, and then they will decide where they will go next, in which country, their parents, all of those things. So it's quite fascinating. And more importantly for people is often what did I choose? What am I trying to achieve here? And often that's answered in that space.
Do you feel, or do you have a belief that you and your daughter, perhaps in this life, had connections in prior lives, or there was an agreement before this life that you would go through and experience that you had gone through? Not so much destined or a contract, but there was that potentiality of that happening.
One of the things that happened prior to her passing was me and her were sitting in the kitchen, and she said to me, "Mum, do you think your friend, who she named, is your soulmate? Because it's like one of my best friends." And I said, "No, I don't actually. I think it's you. I think you have been one of my soulmates time and time again." I said, "We've got all different ones. Dad would be one, Gigi would be one, but I think me and you have had lots of lives together, and I feel like we're on the level." And she just smiled, and she said a little bit later, something to the effect of, "I'd been procrastinating on what I was really meant to be doing here."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that always is curious to me, about that conversation, and potentially that I was dragging my heels a bit on what I'd agreed to do. I don't know. But yes, I do have that feeling. She's very old soul. She actually, I found this video, as you do, you trawl back through all the things that every little piece of your child that you can find. And there was a video there, and she was quite, she went to a Catholic school, but she would say, God can't be a male, he's got to be a woman, right? Because the women are the ones that organize everything on this planet. She would question things like that. And she had drawn this big piece of paper. Now, this is remembering that the regression therapy happened later after this that I went to. But she had drawn this big piece of paper of what heaven was. And she said that there was a room, a making room, where you worked out where you were going what you're going to look like, where you were going to go, what planet you were going to go on. And then she had this book of life, and I said, oh, what's that? The book of life. And I said, what's in that? And she goes, that's got your destiny in it, but you can't read it until you come back. Yeah, so for me, that's really curious.
She was an old soul there, teaching you before she left,
Yes.
and now teaching you since she's on that other side. Oh,
yeah.
And making sure now that you're doing what it is that you had set out to do,
100%.
nudging you along the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
As they could say, a spiritual kick in the, to keep you moving. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow. That is just truly beautiful and amazing. And, there's no end to how spirit moves through us in our lives and past our lives, and no end to the stories and the wonders and the love. And it's nice to be able to open up to that and see that love lives forever. And we're going to go on, and perhaps we interact again and again and again. Who knows? Apparently spirit knows, and your daughter before she passed. So that's just incredible. I guess, is there anything you would like to add, Marie? It's been an incredible story, but is there anything you would like to add or maybe expound upon, such as that beautiful book? You went from doing travel arrangements for people and journeys into doing travels with the mind and kind of these spiritual journeys. So a similar theme, just a little different vibration, I guess. And maybe talk a little bit about the books. And is there anything else you would like to bring in, like any TV shows or films or anything that you would recommend to people that would be hopeful, helpful, and healing?
Yes. So yes, this is the book. If you're interested, if you've got children, grandchildren, whoever. But I think going through grief is obviously really a tricky time, and having somebody who knows the path is really helpful, whether that be through coming across a counsellor or regression. I say pull in all the tools, whatever you need to get you to that next point, or to see things from another perspective. Try it, have an open mind. I know that we're in a time where things are going to really open up. I think over the next couple of years, there's going to be, in Australia, we just had approved for therapy the use of psilocybin and MDMA therapies. Wow. Yeah, we're the first country, I believe, to have approved that. So there's going to be lots of different ways and modalities of healing, and you just have to find the one that resonates with you, I think, and leave the things that don't, and just keep that open mind, and realize that the experience of grief is like waves, as we've discussed today, and it comes and it and you just feeling it is probably letting it wash over, and sitting in that emotion is really important in honoring it and helping it to move through, moving your body, sitting in nature, eating right, drinking lots of water. All those things can really help in that process from moving the grief that does get stored in your body, whether you're feeling it in your stomach or headaches or whatever. Trying to do what you can to move the body and allow that to keep going through is important as well.
Your story is inspiring. I hope that people get up and rolling with their spiritual awareness, and consider getting that book for their children and their grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and anyone else they think could use a little boost in this world. Sometimes things seem to be a little down and dark, and we wonder what's going on. We've got so many things happening, but it takes each one of us to know that we are the light of the world, and we need to support and help each other and feed that light and spread that love, so that maybe our little world can get better, and then shine on for everybody else. So I thank you very, very
That's
much.
beautiful,
Marie.
Diane. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for being a guest on our Carefree and Conscious
My pleasure.
broadcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And if everyone would, or anyone would like to learn more, your website is travelthemind.com.
Travelthemind.com. Yep.
And there's quite a bit of information there. And Maria is also engaged with the Helping Parents Heal chapters there in Australia.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if you all have some folks down there that could use a little help on that end, Maria is a great resource to get them moving. We thank you, and blessings to you. My heart to yours.
Thank you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Good night.
Visit our website, carefreemedium.com, or find us on social media @carefreemedium. Thanks for supporting Carefree and Conscious.